approach, would you state your name and proceed?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jeff Pope. I am counsel for Pronghorn H2 LLC and Sidewinder H2 LLC. I'm here today because the project anticipates that the motion the Secretary of State mentioned is likely a motion to rescind wind leases WL-1620 and 1625. That frankly comes from the discussion the board had at its January special meeting. So the project has asked me to come and talk to the board about Pronghorn's legal position and what it would do in the face of that anticipated vote. As I'm sure will come as no surprise to the members of the board, Pronghorn's position is that a vote to rescind these leases would be unlawful. And I'm going to walk through a couple of reasons why that is, and frankly in the hopes of continuing a positive working relationship between the project and this board going forward. So a bit of low-hanging fruit on this issue is that the board has a statutory and regulatory procedure for canceling leases. Chapter 1, Section 8 of the Rules and Regs for the board sets out sort of a three-step process, if you will. First begins with an investigation by the Director of the Office of State Lands and Investments looking into potential illegalities with the leases. Your statutes define those as things like fraud, deceit, or simple breach of the lease terms. Following that investigation, if it is the Director's recommendation to cancel a lease, the regulations require the Director to file what's called a request for cancellation in the record. That request has to set out the bases for canceling the leases, and that notice then has to get served on the lessee at least 30 days before the board takes any action. The lessee also has rights in that scenario. Specifically, the lessee can request a contested case before this board and has to do so within 20 days of receiving the request for cancellation. None of that's happened. The board has, to my knowledge, the board has not requested the Director, nor has the Director on her own accord initiated an investigation into these leases. There's no request for cancellation that's been filed in the record. My client certainly hasn't received one or had the opportunity to request a contested case. Now, certainly we don't think there's any basis of fraud or any other statutory procedure. So really what we're down to is the leases themselves, because those also give the board rights to terminate. That's the word the leases use. But it's only under very specific conditions. The board has the authority to terminate those leases in instances of default, for example, non-payment of rents, failure to develop the project within a 7-year period, and some other circumstances. But much like the process in the regs for canceling the lease, there is a process in those leases for termination. Namely, my client has to receive notice of whatever it is that is alleged to be an instance of default, and then have the opportunity to cure. Again, we have not received a notice from the Office of State Lands and Investments that there's been an instance of default. We've not had the opportunity to cure any alleged instance of default. So against that backdrop, a vote by the board to rescind these leases would be in direct contravention of the leases themselves, and in effect, a breach of contract, and all of the things that could come with that, both from a litigation standpoint, but frankly also from the reputational harm of the state of Wyoming having to fight with a party because it chose to back out of a contract. It's not good for anybody. Moreover, as this body is well aware, the process that the board has set out is essentially the invocation of the constitutional right to due process. And so not following that also in our mind represents a constitutional violation. So that's a low-hanging fruit. Let me get to some of the more legal nuanced issues that I think the board confronts. As the board discussed last time, the court, Judge Beasley, has issued a decision that vacated a lease. I don't think that the nuance of a lease versus leases was teased out at y'all's last meeting, so I want to discuss that. The issue before Judge Beasley concerned only one of the leases that y'all issued back at your April 2025 meeting, and that was what we refer to as the Pronghorn lease covering lands in conversation. Amherst County. That lease, of course, was set aside by Judge Peasley. Y'all are well aware, y'all have filed a notice of appeal. Pronghorn has done so too. We anticipate probably in the next 2 weeks or so receiving a docketing letter from the Wyoming Supreme Court that will set our briefing schedule and keep that case moving forward. So the reason I mention that distinction is the discussion that we heard last time at the January 8th meeting was about Judge Peasley vacating the leases. That would be inaccurate. He only vacated one of those. So the Sidewinder lease remains an operational lease and would be subject to those procedures we just talked about. As for the Pronghorn lease, there's an additional reason we don't think the board has authority to act in this instance to rescind the leases. Wyoming law is very well settled that when an agency takes an action and that gets appealed to a district court or even subsequently to the Wyoming Supreme Court, the agency who made that decision loses jurisdiction. And there's a pretty easy explanation for why that is. You make a decision, we want the courts to review it. The Wyoming Administrative Procedures Act allows for that review both at the district court level and the Supreme Court level. If the agency were allowed to then change their mind, change the decision, withdraw the decision, that appellate review process, those statutory rights fall by the wayside. And unlike the trial system in our country where we're presenting facts or developing arguments, the appellate system is supposed to be a fixed universe. Whatever happened is what happened, and the court is going to review that for whatever arguments are made before. So Wyoming law, is consistent with a lot of our other states, says y'all no longer have jurisdiction over that lease once it gets appealed. So taking all of those things together, Pronghorn's position is that an action to rescind the leases would be unlawful. As a consequence of that, if the board were to vote to rescind them, Pronghorn has asked me to explain what we would do to protect those interests. This is frankly just in the interest of transparency. I don't intend to make threats, but just simply explain, as I've explained to the Attorney General's office, what we are prepared to do. Should the board vote today, we will be filing a lawsuit today, and also seeking a temporary restraining order and a preliminary injunction. Based on my prior explanation, we're bullish on our chances of success there. Likewise, we'll be filing a petition for review to begin the formal appellate procedure for the board's vote. Now, I and the project are cognizant of the public concerns about the project, as well as the political issues before the board and the desire to find a proverbial win-win, if you will. So I wanted to try to offer that to the board rather than just a lawyer standing up here boring you with legal mumbo jumbo. So here is what I would propose. Trust your process. Specifically, trust the Wyoming industrial siting process. That is a process that I've had the pleasure of guiding a number of companies through over the last decade. And while there has been some discussion about that process in prior public meetings, I wanted to put some fine points on it because a number of the concerns you heard at the January meeting, and frankly concerns I suspect you're going to hear after I'm done talking, relate to things that process is designed to deal with. So for example, we've heard discussion about the project creating a wind wall when looking at the project as well as other wind projects throughout Wyoming. The industrial siting process accounts for that. The project will have to do what is called a cumulative impact assessment, where it not only analyzes its environmental and socioeconomic impacts, but it also analyzes its combined effect with other projects that surround it. And that's not just wind projects, that would be someone who will build a data center, a natural gas facility, whatever. Whatever large industrial projects exist within Commerce County, Niobrara County, those would have to be considered as part of the industrial siting application. As the board, I'm sure, knows, the industrial siting process also provides a forum for the public to say, we don't like this. So not only can they say it here, but they can say it in front of the Industrial Siting Council and try to persuade them to not grant a permit. And they would have multiple opportunities for that public comment during that process, including the formal contested case procedure that sits at the very end. One other concern I think that process can help alleviate that we've heard raised is what happens if this project goes belly up? You build these wind turbines, they're out there, the project leaves, the state's just going to have these stranded assets. And the board just had a similar discussion about the state hospital on that. The industrial siting process requires the applicant to develop what's called a decommissioning and reclamation plan that goes with its application. As part of that, they have to estimate the full cost to decommission and reclaim everything they build, as well as the cost to restore the land to its pre-project topography and setting. And then that number, whatever it is, and it tends to be in the millions or tens of millions of dollars, the project has to post a bond with the Industrial Siting Division for that full amount. And there are very strict regulations on the form of that bond, who can issue that bond. For example, whatever bonding company they work with has to be listed in the United States Treasury's Circular 570, i.e. it's on a federal approved list for bonding. And then that bond amount is revisited every 5 years. And if it needs to be adjusted upward, it gets adjusted upward. Some instances, depending upon the project, it could go downward. But there is a constant relook to ensure that the state of Wyoming has immediate access to funds in order to protect the public from a stranded asset. The final thing I will say about your industrial siting process is, in my practice of helping permit projects, I have also had the pleasure of permitting projects in other states. I have sat on panels where we have done 50 state surveys of county and state level permitting procedures. And I can tell you that Wyoming has one of, if not the most robust state permitting procedure anywhere in the country. And I'll give you an easy contrast. Our neighbors to the south, not exactly known for deregulation, but that's exactly what they've done from a permitting standpoint. In Colorado, there is no state level permitting process. There is no siting board to review projects. There is no cumulative impact assessment required. There's no bonding required. Instead, all of that has been delegated to the counties. And counties are free to pass whatever regulations they see fit, or in some instances, do nothing at all. Wyoming, on the other hand, has a process that requires a comprehensive review of the socioeconomic conditions and impacts of projects, same thing with the environment, and a fail-safe with our bonding process. So to the extent you hear public outcry today, as you did at the January 8th meeting, I would encourage you to remember these leases were step one in this process. There's probably 500 more to come. More opportunity for public input, more opportunity for scrutiny, more onus on the project to demonstrate that it is in the best interest of Wyoming, and more opportunities for independent third parties to say yes or no to the project. I would urge you to let that process play out and keep these leases in place so that, frankly, I don't have to go to court, and you and the project can work collaboratively together for the benefit of the state. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Pope. Are there questions for Mr. Pope?
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Auditor.
Mr. Pope, thanks for being here. And I recognize that I'm comparing apples and oranges with this question, but if your client had directed you not to appeal the case, what would you have done?
Not to appeal Judge Beasley's decision.
Correct.
Well, I would have been personally upset about it because I disagree with that decision. Madam Auditor, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I should have said through you. I think I would defer to the project on how that would have reshaped them. I can tell you from conversations, frankly, that are going to appear if we have to file a lawsuit, is the absence of the pronghorn lease essentially means the failure of the pronghorn project. That would not move forward. That company, as an ongoing concern, would cease to exist, and some very high level back of the napkin sort of financial losses, which frankly we can't say with any certainty what those would be, but they are astronomically large numbers based upon the projected capital expenditure.
Other questions? Other questions? One last time, Mr. Treasurer or Mr. Secretary, any questions? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pope.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
capacity right now. I'm off of a cold there. We got from the guy. So, my name is Gene Van Diest, and I am here on behalf of True Ranches LLC, a multi-generational family-owned ranching operation in Wyoming. Our ranch has operated on both private and state lands for decades. And like many working ranches, our ability to remain viable depends on careful land management, long-term planning, and diversified sources of income. I'm here today to express True Ranch's support for the Pronghorn project. From our perspective as landowners and ranchers, projects like Pronghorn represent a practical and responsible use of state land that can coexist with agriculture while helping ranches adapt to the realities of modern operations. Rising costs, market volatility, and narrow margins make it increasingly difficult for working ranches to rely on livestock alone. We believe complementary projects like this can help provide stability without displacing agricultural use. It is our understanding that the Pronghorn project went through the required review process, received approval, and entered into a valid lease agreement with the Office of State Lands and Investment. Based on that approval, Pronghorn moved forward in good faith and has already invested significant time, money, and effort in advancing the project. For landowners like True Ranches, the approved lease represented a legitimate opportunity to generate future revenue that could help support ongoing ranching operations and long-term care of our lands. As many ranchers will attest to, predictable income matters. Revenue from projects like this help support the day-to-day costs of operating a ranch and maintaining the land in a productive working condition. In many cases, that added stability is what allows ranches to remain intact and family operated rather than being subdivided or sold off. When thoughtfully planned, projects like Pronghorn can coexist with livestock and support the continued use of these lands as working ranches. We understand and respect that not everyone supports wind development, and those perspectives deserve consideration. However, Wyoming has long upheld landowner rights, and the principles that lawful land uses should not be dictated by neighboring opposition, especially when projects such as this have met all regulatory requirements set by the state standards. Allowing opposition alone to overturn a valid lease creates uncertainty for landowners and weakens confidence in the state's leasing process. Aside from wind development, this decision likely carries broader implications beyond the sign of this single project. If a lease that has been properly approved and relied upon can be rescinded after significant investment, it raises concerns for landowners and developers across many industries about whether state agreements can be counted on. That uncertainty ultimately affects investment, revenues, and beneficiaries the board is tasked with protecting. True Ranches believes that honoring valid agreements, respecting land and lease rights, and recognizing the role projects like Pronghorn play in supporting working ranches are all critical to Wyoming's long-term interests. Decisions like this raise an important question for landowners, investors, and partners across the state. Can the state's processes and agreements be trusted? And can Wyoming be relied upon as a business partner? We respectfully urge the board to consider not only the immediate concerns surrounding this project, but the precedent and lasting impacts that rescinding the lease could create. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Mendez, and I'm sorry about your cold. Will you stand for any questions if there are any? Are there questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Please. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board, online and in person. My name is Marguerite Herman, and sorry, I've got a mint in my mouth. I'm here to just put a perspective on this wind lease issue, and it's interesting the comments you've heard this morning, about this trust land. It's interesting that the term trust land has not come up yet, so I'll be the first to mention and put it in today's record. These leases are on school trust lands, which were created, the concept was created, one of the first things our government did when it was formed after the Revolutionary War. You know, we're aware of our founders' emphasis on public education, and so they designated, well, when we came along, two sections per township for the sole purpose of supporting K-12 public education. Some states got 4 sections, we got 2, 16, and 36. And along with that was a trust duty on the state to produce revenue from these trust sections for public schools. So having said that, that's my perspective right now is not only these rent leases, but the effect of overturning them, which Mr. Pope mentioned, and the other gentleman, that there are some big issues on the table when you consider these and whether to rescind those leases. First of all, is that from now on is OSLI that negotiates leases in good faith. Then when it gets to the board, issues that are real regulatory issues then become a factor. Is it ad hoc? Do you have any kind of guiding principles here when you decide whether to grant or rescind a lease? Is it the level of political difficulty? Is it the complaints of neighbors? Is it people who are against all renewable energy, which one of your board members seems to be? Is that sort of the overriding principle that's going to drive these things, or is it going to be the best situation that produces revenue consistent with your trust duty for public education? And I'm not going to repeat myself what I mentioned up in Douglas, but I would just have to say to approach this with caution, that not only does it affect these leases, but I think it sends a message to other earnest people with projects that could come to the state for whatever purpose, to make money, to propose good deals for the trust, that those deals can be undone or kind of an ad hoc. You just don't know what you're going to face at the lease level. And understanding that there's great scrutiny at the siting level as well, as Mr. Pope described. So understanding that this is just the lease level, regulatory is later, and that there must be some kind of a consistent policy here, I think, imposed, that had not the adjacent landowners complained, and I don't say that the complaints are not without grounds. You know, I'm not opining on that at all. But I'll just have to say that just proceed with caution on this. What damage you might be doing, or not be damage, but impairment to the future ability of these lands to make money for the schools as your trust duty requires. And just and let the process play out is one thing I was going to mention, but it's been said well. And I would also just say that you know, with the I actually would think appealing this to the Wyoming Supreme Court would be good idea. Judge Peasley's decision, simply because it left questions that I think need to be determined by the Wyoming Supreme Court. For instance, the cases that the judge cited were local land use, county-based zoning land use questions. Is that going to have control over trust lands? It's a question that's been decided both ways. So it's probably good to have the Supreme Court opine on that. The other thing that it would decide is that a good justice could decide who has standing, because that standing issue was sort of a major one, part of that issue. So I would say that it's the state's benefit, to OSLI, to the board's benefit, to have the Supreme Court weigh in on those issues, which then could be, going forward, there might be, you know, you may say, well, I don't like that, and then there would be legislative or regulatory fixes for it. But right now, we have on a district level, we have opinions we have rulings out a lot more, and to please weigh very carefully the trust fiduciary obligation you have to make money from these lands. And it's kind of, as I said in Douglas, if not wind projects, well, you know, is it case by case? Is it completely off the table? Is solar off the table now? You know, I think it's probably good to be very painstaking going forward in understanding the ramifications.
My name is Wendy Volk. I'm speaking as an individual citizen and a Wyoming ranch owner. If I may, I would like to present a map, if I may.
Sure, please. And we'll make these maps available to you, Mr. Secretary, and Mr. Treasurer.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your time and members of the board. I wanted to share with you a map that I prepared for last month, and I was sorry I was unable to attend at the meeting. This matter is before you is beyond one project. Wyoming is no longer debating a single wind project. We are confronting a growing industrial corridor stretching across southeastern and the southern half of our state. As you'll see in this map, it goes along Interstate 80 corridor from Rawlins to Cheyenne and from Cheyenne up to Casper. There are several projects that are at different stages of permitting that's not reflected on the map. But right now, you'll see the second attachment shows that there's 1,800 turbines right now in Wyoming depicted on those pink sticky notes. And many of those involved 40-year leases that you might have signed with the state land trust land involved. These projects are, what is concerning me is that these are working lands, open space, and wildlife corridors that have long defined the character of this part of Wyoming. What's concerning is the scale of these projects when they are put together is creating the Wyoming wind wall, and I was pleased to hear another gentleman mention that Wyoming wind wall. I've had people say, Wendy, I don't think you are accurate. And when I started mapping out, this all stemmed from a proposed wind project here in Laramie County called the Laramie Range Project that is adjacent to our family's 153-year-old ranch. And the more I looked into the process, and then I became familiar not only at a county level, but the state level, the industrial siting process that I saw take place in Chugwater, that's on over 50,000 acres, I did comment, and I did see the public comments concerning these projects today, and the ones that are depicted on the map did not make a difference at the industrial siting. The public comments were strong. There was public testimony, but it's not like a county commissioner coming before you. In the industrial siting, unless I petition to become part of that process, it is a legal trial. I think the public thought they could stand up and express their concerns, and that there's a real misnomer. The industrial siting, and I did read the 2,400 pages of that application in Chugwater, and they did talk about cumulative impact, but they only mentioned on the Chugwater project, just like this project, they're not depicting the 1,800 turbines. They mentioned the Meta project in Cheyenne, the gold mine project in Cheyenne, and they talked about the possible project of the Laramie Range Wind project. Those were the only projects that were identified in that industrial siting. And I think we need to look at these 40-year leases that the state is entering into, because we are forever changing the landscape. And yes, there are bonds and there's reclamation process, but we are forever changing the landscaping of what Wyoming will look like. I'm 60 years old and a 40-year lease now. I hope to be alive in 100 years. But the future generations of Wyoming are going to be straddled with these impacts of, we are disrupting wildlife migration patterns, we are disrupting the vegetation and the habitats forever. They're not coming back. We're destroying our wildlife that is so pristine, and tourists come here because they're not seeing what Wyoming offers in other parts of the country. I don't want us to look like Iowa, the second largest state for wind production. I don't want us to look like Texas. I want us to continue to look like Wyoming. I appreciate your time and consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolf. Are there questions for Ms. Wolf?
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Bob Geese. I'm the general manager said way too late. This thing has gotten ramrodded, and now we are in one hell of a position. Lawsuits have been started, lawsuits are being said again, and either way, no matter what decision you make, there's going to be lawsuits. There is going to be lawsuits. And it's because people didn't use caution to begin with. One of the people on this board, early on in some of this, made some mistakes, but then that person was intelligent enough to go and educate himself and talk to people. He kind of stood with what the people of Wyoming wanted. As the process started into it, I think some other people decided to start getting a little educated and find out, and also saw the way that the people of Wyoming felt about this. And maybe they're changing some of their minds and they're starting to see things a little bit differently, hopefully. The things have been discussed as an example, fiduciary responsibility to these state lands and to the education. I agree. And I know one of the other times that I spoke in front of you, I talked about, and this isn't marijuana, but we talked about Oregon and Colorado, and when it turned around and legalized it, it's costing those states far more money than the revenues they're gaining. The responsibility is a fiduciary responsibility, a wise one, a wise decision. I've also stated before, he who doesn't study history is deemed to repeat it. The projects have been around in Wyoming. They started in Medicine Bow many years ago. And that's a good place to look at. If these are so great and wonderful, and they produce so much money, why hasn't the town of Medicine Bow, has anybody driven through Medicine Bow recently? We're going back 30 years. I don't see any prosperity in Rock River, Medicine Bow. It has done nothing. Matter of fact, that project doesn't even have one employee in either one of those towns. Not one employee. So the money that they promise is not coming out. I have talked with past county commissioners in Carbon County. I've talked to a lot of ranchers up there. Some are for it, most are against. And they said it just has not worked out. And as I stated back in April, this is a new technology. And I mentioned how it took over 80 years for the automobile to overtake the horse. And that is true. This is a relatively new industry, and we're just jumping in. We're not protecting the things that have protected us. There's not been a lot of transparency in this whole thing. That's been one of our complaints. And here all of a sudden, and this begs some questions, Judge Peasley struck it down. Part of the reason was to simplify it is that they weren't going to tie onto the state grid, the state electrical grid. So all of a sudden this project's changing, at least in Commerce County. It's just going to be wind now. Wait a minute, I thought the goal of this whole thing was hydrogen. What the hell happened to hydrogen? Why? So it begs a question. Two things. And I speak with a lot of people speak with me, but one of the first questions is okay, is this truly just about subsidies, period? They're abandoning hydrogen, which was the whole goal of this thing to begin with. Oh, let's throw that out. Another thing that has been questioned, and I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but I do tend to speak from my mind. At the January meeting, Mr. Governor, the Secretary of State asked you to make sure that the Attorney General did not get involved, to stand down. I don't know, I'm not privy. But I find it really funny that he's about ready to go to court and argue on something that it does say in the state of Wyoming law about tying onto the power grid. And now, oh, we're gonna abandon hydrogen and we're gonna tie onto the power grid. Boy, that sure makes it easy for the Attorney General to fight this in court. But what changed? Why? Was it the Attorney General saying, here's a good game plan? Here's how I can win and win? Was he asked to stand down? I don't know. But these are the questions that come through the constituents' minds. The second thing is as every single meeting that I have been to on this, we've got 80, 90, 95% of the people that are saying, don't do this, please don't do this. But yet, it just gets ramrodded down our throats. And the people of Wyoming are not happy about it. Wyoming is what America was. Another saying is that we're 20 years behind everybody else. Is there anything wrong with that? To a certain extent, there isn't. One of the other questions that's been discussed about is property rights. I'll guarantee you that I am just as sincere about property rights and everybody's individual property rights as anybody in this room, if not more so. But we're seeing here that one set of people, and actually a majority set of people, their property rights are being completely ignored for individual property rights. Because these types of projects here are affecting far more than just a borderline. Water does not respect property lines. Wind does not respect property lines. View sheds do not respect property lines. And if view sheds aren't important, then why do people spend so much damn money for property up in Jackson Hole? They're buying it for the views. This is not a salvage yard that we can put up a little fence. This is part of what I'm talking about. This is a new technology. We have a new set of problems. And people are moving way too fast on all of this, but we don't have the answers to too many things. How do we protect everybody's property rights? And they all do need to be protected. But you see, instead of stopping and taking caution, like should have been quite a while ago, this is just getting ramrodded down everybody's throats. Yes, there's a lot of things that are on the minds of the people of the state of Wyoming. And it doesn't seem to matter what we say. And that's why a lot of us are questioning a lot of things and the motives that some people have. I'm not making accusations, it's just that's what's on their minds. One of the last things is it's kind of funny in all of this, and this is the first time in a long time that I've heard about the Sidewinder in Niagara County. Everything has been about Pronghorn too, including the most recent announcement that we're going to stop doing hydrogen, we're going to go to wind, we're going to go from, what was it, like 57,000 acres down to like 16,000 acres, we're just going to do wind in Commerce County. What about Niagara County? They still planning to do hydrogen there? Are they cutting that project back? This is part of the problem. There is not transparency. We cannot find out what is going on. And that's where everybody needs to take a deep breath. And we need to assess where we're at on this. And I really hope that the board here will truly represent Wyoming's interests, and the people of Wyoming. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Giese. If you would stand, I think there may be some questions for you. I think Auditor, you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, thanks for driving reminds me of something that I should have maybe asked Mr. Pope. I only know what I read in the Douglas budget about the change in the project proposal, and so that was news to me as well, so maybe, I don't know, if somebody from the applicant could speak to that, perhaps, at now or at a later time. Anyway, but thank you for reminding me.
I can do that at a later time. Are there other questions? Thank you.
We do.
Mr. Pope? Thank you.
Never good to hear from a lawyer twice, Mr. Chairman. Madam Auditor, I can tell you that what the project has done is attempt to incorporate some of this public comment. So for example, large concerns about the hydrogen facility were about the water, as Mr. Geese alluded to. And so what the project did, as it set forth in its applications for these leases and are set forth in the leases themselves, the project decided, you know what, that is not a viable industrial off-taker for the electricity, and so they are, again, as the leases and their applications allow, they're searching for the best economic option, whether that's a different type of industrial customer or to transmit electricity to the grid. But that is flexibility that was built into the leases themselves. In terms of the acreage change, that is a byproduct of what I alluded to in terms of this being step one, and there are hundreds more steps to come. When projects are in this phase of development, they really haven't had a chance to do what is called micrositing, which is to more tightly align where they're going to put turbine locations, solar panel locations, transmission infrastructure. And what ultimately ends up happening for a lot of these projects is they say, okay, let's start big, and then as we figure out where stuff is going to fit and what's the optimal engineering alignment, the project boundary in the area tends to shrink down. So what you saw from the Douglas budget was in large part a result of additional work that the project has done, the micrositing that will take place, and you would see more development in that process when it submits its industrial siting application.
Mr. Chairman, and I understand you may not be ready to answer this yet, but are there similar changes in the works to Sidewinder?
Mr. Chairman, through you, Madam Auditor, I don't know the answer to that question. I can say, generally speaking, again, my experience with wind, solar, and other types of large projects of this magnitude, the initial acreage tends to be, let's start big, let's get everything we need, and then they tend to shrink down over time as the engineering takes place. So I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, but I don't know.
Thanks. Thank you.
I have a couple questions.
Please, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Mr. Pope, I've been going through here the contract and the rules, and I'm really not reading. I see in the contract where there's a 30-day notice of the intent to rescind. I do think that there's a strong argument that Judge Peasley's order supersedes that because he's ordered that it's contrary to law. But I don't see anything about an investigation or notice in Chapter 6 of the rules around wind. It says the director may conduct and may recommend, but the board also has the authority to proceed, and I think that's pretty clear with the rules. So I really would push back on your characterizations of what the board's rules say with regard to cancellation.
Response?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, in my line of work, it's no surprise that people disagree with me. I think, I apologize if I gave you the wrong citation, but there is a specific process based on the statute that talks about the legal bases for canceling leases. And then the board has promulgated regulations that talk about the investigation by the director. And off the top of my head, I do not remember if that uses the word may or shall. But I do know, Mr. Secretary, that the request for cancellation, the service of that cancellation request upon the lessee, the opportunity for the lessee to request a contested case, that is all shall language. That has to happen in order for the board to go through this process. And again, as you noted, the leases themselves do provide a requirement of notice and varying deadlines for opportunities to cure.
Mr. Chairman, would you like to, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Pope, would you like to get that citation? Because I'm only seeing the contract, the 30-day notice, chapter 6, it lays out that an investigation can occur, but it in no way precludes the board taking action on its own. And I mean, in my opinion, one of the issues we do have here is we have an Attorney General's office that is sort of at odds with, where I believe a majority of the board is going. But if you could give me these citations, because it's, I can't just take your word for it, Mr. Pope. I mean, I want the process to be laid out correctly, but I gotta have a citation here, and in terms of the rules, I'm just not seeing it.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, I'm happy to go grab my laptop. If I can have a few minutes, I can come back up with
That'd be
a
fine.
citation.
We have others that will testify, so that'd be fine. Thanks. Anyone else want to approach the board, please?
Chairman and land board
Yeah,
members.
can you press the button to turn the light on? It's the little guy that looks like he's sneezing.
That helps.
Yeah, thanks.
President, Chairman, and land board, I come before you today as a fourth generation Wyomingite and also as the executive director of the Conservancy. I've come before this
And again, just your name too, please.
Ann Brand, Albany County Conservancy, and I've come before this board before, and I would like to specifically address some issues today. Now we are looking at renewable energy, specifically wind energy, impacting 9 Wyoming counties. And so the Conservancy has been involved in 5 industrial siting situations. Most recently, the Chugwater Wind. We were brought in as an Eagle specialist. And I can tell you that Industrial Siting Council is not the siting board is not looking at cumulative impacts at all, and that is firsthand participation in a participating party capacity. And so I'd like to point out a few things today. So I'd like to start again with a quote that I referred to when I was in Douglas. What we see is a lot of these developers coming in from out of state, but they're almost like house flippers. This is a quote from Angie Bruce with Wyoming Game and Fish. They do one piece of the process, they do the permitting, and then they sell it. And I'd like to also point out that transparency has been an issue. So I'd like to highlight that the Conservancy over the past 6 years has put in a lot of focus. And when you look, you can find information, as we have seen today with maps that are provided by individual Wyoming residents who can look those things up. And I would like to discuss just in general the background of this type of energy development and how they start larger and they microsite. So in dealing with wind energy projects both in Albany and Carbon County, the Conservancy submitted a comment letter regarding a project, the Two Rivers Wind Project, 4 miles north of Medicine Bow, Wyoming. We've heard a lot about Medicine Bow, Wyoming today. I would like to address that project, the Two Rivers Wind Project, the Conservancy submitted public comment regarding, and I would like to point out that in that environmental assessment, that project could not count bald eagles correctly. Why this pertains today is Paul Martin worked for Blue Energy Renewables, Blue Earth in Canada for over 13 years. And that was a Blue Earth Renewable project, and is a Blue Earth Renewable project, and it is in eagle habitat. And the Conservancy's mission is to protect, preserve, and promote habitat, historic sites, and wildlife in South Wyoming. And so that gets to, that is what this is. Blue Earth not only was involved in that project, but also the Lucky Star project. A lot of comments were made to the Carbon County commissioners that weren't necessarily, correct. And then also Boswell Springs which is a wind energy project in Albany County, many Conservancy members are dealing with. That project was also a Blue Earth Energy project, and it has sold to Interjax, which is in Quebec. And then they didn't have money to build that project, and so I've been told that actually there's a Wyoming wind energy company that owns Boswell Springs. So this is definitely cumulative, and the industrial siting division is way behind the curveball. The public has no transparency, so it is of great concern. You need to take a step back, and you need to think about what is unfolding in the state. And you need to know that the constituents in the state are very aware of what's transpiring and what's happening. And so I want to highlight my comment letter submitted through the ACC regarding eagles. We exceed the local area population, possibly just by permits alone separately. And this will continue to ripen and unfold. And we're not talking about just a localized population, we're talking a population. We had the highest number of breeding pairs of golden eagles in the lower 48 until wind energy hit Wyoming in the southeast corridor. So this continues to become flagrant. And I point out when I spoke at Industrial Siting for Chugwater Wind, they don't expect their eagle take permit to even transpire until 2028. Yet the industrial siting approved Chugwater Wind. So there are gaping holes in those permits. There are gaping holes at the county level when they explain that it's a work in progress and they ask their commissioners to approve. I've seen blanks on applications submitted that have been filled in later. There are gaping holes at the state level, and there are flagrant, fatally flawed gaps in the federal level. And I speak on that with knowledge. The Conservancy now has filed 3 petitions in federal court regarding what's unfolding in Wyoming. The first one filed was in 2023. That was focused on the Rock Creek Gen-Tie line, which totally sits on federal land. The Wyoming public was not notified whatsoever, and BLM signed off on a right-of-way, and that is against the law. Then we filed the Rail Tie Wind petition in federal court. We were finally forced to do that after 5 constructive years of consulting party input regarding that project. And we had to step in at the end because of an egregious section 106, 110F federal violation. And we're still waiting for the Department of Energy to produce their legal record. And the district federal court has ruled in our favor regarding a motion asking for the entire legal record regarding that section 106 process. And then on December 4th, we filed a Dead Eagle Data Freedom of Information Act petition against Fish and Wildlife Service in the District of Columbia. So when I hear comments like fatally flawed, and I hear the threat of litigation, and I also hear the conversation about we would have to seek an injunction, that's nothing new to the state of Wyoming. You as our elected officials and appointed, it is your responsibility to look at what's in the best interest of the people of Wyoming and to take into consideration your responsibilities and state statute. And that is why I'm here today, is encouraging you not to just react. I hear a lot, very strong words, but sometimes things have to play out with due process. In this case, they really do. It's long overdue. You have people trying to communicate concerns regarding wildlife. State school trust land is important, and people are identifying that financially these projects weren't in the best interest of people in the state. Our second economic driver is tourism, and so I encourage you to really take a deep dive into this and think about your responsibilities. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Brand. Are there questions for Ms. Brand? Appreciate your comments. Thanks very much. Mr. Pope?
This is hopefully the last time I have to come up, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I have those citations for you. So the board's authority to cancel leases on the legal basis for those is found in Wyoming statute 36-5-113. The procedures that I was outlining about the director's investigation, the request for cancellation, those are found in chapter 1, section 8 of the board's regulations. So for example, subsection B there says, a lease cancellation proceeding shall be commenced when the director files a request for cancellation. Subsection C says the director shall serve a copy of the request upon the lessee at least 30 days before the board acts on that request. Subsection D says the lessee shall have 20 days. So that's where that comes from, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else want to approach the board? Anyone online, Mr. Monk? No, we have. Okay. We'll go in here and then to online.
Good morning, Governor and Board. I'm Bruce Romel, I'm the mayor of the town of Glen Rock. I spoke to you several times. I had concerns about water usage in that area. We leased water and paid the state for water. That's our sole water source out there. It also affects this project affects all of our community, Western Converse County. Please come talk to the people in Western Converse County to ask them what they think of any wind and solar projects. They're not in favor of. The other thing is, I think Judge Peasley made a correct judgment of what he said about what this project was. They turned around and changed the project in midstream. I think it's time for this board to change their decision and step back and look at this really close, sir, and rethink this, because they changed the game. There's something wrong with this. You guys really need to look at this. It may not be able to be done today, but I think the legal process with the AG and everything else going on, I think it really needs to look at. I think this project needs to go away. We have millions of those, that nightmare up there, it's all on private land. There's enough private landowners that want it because it puts money in what helps those ranchers. Don't put it on state land. Don't deny us access to the use of public and state land.
Thank you, Mayor Romel. And I just know for the record that we did have a meeting in Converse County for that purpose.
Yeah, and I was there. I spoke to you there.
I remember that,
But I continue that fight. I have to represent the constituents that put me in office. It's a small town, but also represent the people of Western Converse County. They come to us and talk to us about it.
Appreciate that. Thanks. Are there questions for the mayor? Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much for coming. So we have Mr. Jacobson.
Thank you, Governor, Board. My name is Stephen G. Jacobson. I'm a retired occupational physician. I'm speaking on behalf of myself. You're sitting here as a board looking at the future and trying to understand what's going to happen with your decision. Well, several years ago, I was sitting with my mother. She had really bad COPD. She's on oxygen. She's about to die. She says to me, Steve, if I would have known what smoking would have done to me, I would have never started smoking. It's interesting because my profession at one time recommended that people start smoking to lose weight. So as you sit here and you listen to these conversations, hope you take into consideration what the future is going to be and the unpredictability of it. I heard Attorney Pope talk about, he's talking about transparency, and it's not a threat. But when I hear somebody tell me it's not something, that's exactly what it is. So I heard Mr. Mendoza talk about that they want to have coexisting livestock with these wind turbines. I'd like to know whether he's considered the impact of microfiberglass on microplastics, which are a product of fiberglass. These wind turbines throw off fiberglass. They go into the soil, your cows eat it, it goes into the water, it goes all over. And so we don't know what the impact of microplastics are. But I do know that maybe in the future, we're gonna look back and see maybe you people have made a really good decision to say we're gonna back off on this kind of technology. Fiberglass, what does it cause? Well, it helps insulate our houses. It also makes very strong wind turbine blades. But it also causes pulmonary fibrosis. And pulmonary fibrosis is irreversible. Once your lungs go, you're done. So what is the long-term effect on what we're talking about here? I don't know. But I think we need to slow down and think about this. One of the things that we do know is these wind turbines create vibration. Does anyone know exactly what that means? Well, you can hear down to 20 hertz. That's how low you can hear. Have you ever been sitting at a stoplight and all of a sudden this car pulls up next to you and all you do is you hear this bass go boom, 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 boom. You're not really hearing that. What you're doing is you're feeling that in your chest as these low vibrations, less than 20 hertz, are pounding on your car and on your chest. The noise impact on people that they can't hear is real. It affects their ability to sleep, it affects their motion, and it has effects on their cardiovascular. And the thing that's so disturbing is that this low frequency vibration, you cannot attenuate it. It'll go through walls as it did through the sides of your car. So I hope as you look at this, you take in considerations that maybe there are a lot of things that people are not aware of. Let's talk about the decommissioning. I happened to get really involved in the Laramie Range project, and I spent hours, days reviewing their the application for the Laramie Range wind project that was produced by Connect Gen. I was appalled, absolutely appalled, at the amount of work they had done, including the routes that they had determined that they would bring these wind turbines through Cheyenne. And when I looked at it, and I said, how did they arrive at these? These routes were determined, do you know how? Nobody drove them. They were determined by Google Maps. And so we have a project that where they're determining to take these wind blades to the length of a football field through the city of Cheyenne based upon what? Google Maps? This is the detail that is lacking in these applications. And you guys don't look at these. You could never do it. I mean, I spent hours and hours looking to this, trying to figure out what this stuff meant. Decommissioning? Go back to the original topography. That's what they're required to do. But when you read it, it says no. They're going to take back to the original way for the land down to 4 feet, But if the landowner says it's okay to leave the cables and all this stuff in the ground down to 3 feet, that's okay. So your land is never going to be what it was. So let's talk a little bit about the renewability. I heard someone talking about leases, your fiduciary responsibility. What is your fiduciary responsibility? Well, when I go to rent a Hertz car, I want to have one that works, and then one that looks nice, and one I can rely upon. And that's usually not one that's 35 years old. So I want my car that I'm going to rent to be usable and functional. And these cars are not renewable, and neither is their land if they abuse it, like is being proposed by these wind farms. So I think I would really encourage you to really consider whether this is what we really want to have done and whether it really is renewable. So in 35 years, when these things are supposed to decommission, and I heard that, oh, they're going to have all this money put away and they're going to make sure that they're removed. What are they going to do? They're going to take it back so it looks nice. It's going to be like your walls. You have wallpaper that you put over the defects underneath, but is it really usable? Is the structure going to fall apart? Probably. And let's talk about the respect that these industries showing to our residents. I was involved and I listened to the county commissioners in Laramie, listened to testimony hour after hour after hour. And then on September 16th, 2025, the Laramie County Commissioners denied the site plan to connect Gin for their site plan. The vote was 3-1 against. So that was after hours of testimony. And the reason for doing it was because there were so many unanswered questions, their heads were spinning. And Connect Gin couldn't answer the questions. And I understand this is not talking about Connect Gin, but the point is that they're all the same. They don't have answered questions. They said, well, we'll put up this wind turbine, it may be like this, but if we can't get that one, we're gonna get this one. It's like they don't know. They don't know. So what did Connect Gin do? They have now decided to file a lawsuit. So now they filed a lawsuit against the county commissioners and against the residents of Laramie County who testified. Many, or maybe 1 or 2 people said, well, maybe it would be a good idea. But most of the people were saying, we don't want this. So what is the respect that this company has shown for the residents of Laramie County? What is the respect that these industries are showing to the residents of Wyoming? What is the respect that these companies are showing you as a board and you as a governor? Absolutely none. They're ignoring it. And the interesting thing is that they now have decided they're going to go to Industrial Siting Commission. And so they notified the county commissioners through the county secretary that they're going to go to the Industrial Siting Commission, which is every right they have. But not in one place in that letter that he sent to Deborah Lee did they mention that the county commissioners on a vote of 3-1 denied them their site plan. So there's it's like what Wendy Vogt was talking about. There's nobody considering the overall impact of what's going on in the state of Wyoming. And I hope you people can. And I really hope that you would take into consideration what is going on to our state. You have a fiduciary responsibility to the residents of the state of Wyoming. You don't have a fiduciary responsibility to Connect Gin or to the Pronghorn H2M. But you do have, I guess, a responsibility that if you get sued, but I do think that it may be reasonable that you stand for the people of Wyoming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. Is there a question for Mr. Jacobson? There is not. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? I think you're on.
Okay. My name is Charlotte Davies, and I'm a Commerce County landowner. I have huge fears of this project. Once they get their one little foot in, it's gonna change everything. It is going to make my value of my property go down. I'm gonna lose my cattle ranch. I only have 50 cows. My husband works, my children work. We tried this. This is what we want to do. In my experience with oil fields and Rocky Mountain Power right now, they say they wanted to do a new substation on state lease. I said, they already have one there. I said, okay, no problem. My family and I said, okay, we're gonna do this. They paid us a little bit of money, and then all of a sudden, this substation is 5 times bigger than they said it would be. At least 5 times bigger. Oh, well, we didn't think it would be this big, but it had to get bigger. It had to get bigger. There has been hundreds of pieces of garbage that I have picked up, that I have taken pictures of, that I have sent all these places to try to get something for them to do. They say it's not theirs. Well, when it says the Deer Creek substation is where it was delivered, I kind of think that's where it went. It says Rocky Mountain Power, it has all these things. I have no anything to get to these people to pick up their garbage. They say it's not theirs. And it's on state land. That's my responsibility. So I'm not there picking up garbage all the time. That's not mine. And also these companies say, well, we paid you, we can do whatever we want now. That's Rocky Mountain Power and that's oil field. So this company is going to be no different. And supposedly 2 years ago, they contacted me about my state land, and I said, no, I do not want it. It will definitely affect my my property and my cattle operation. Didn't hear anything about it until last April. And then they said, I spoke to Paul Martin, and he says, oh, well, it's not on your property. We don't have it on your state land. You said no. Okay, well, what happens when they get in there and go, oh, wait, we do need your state land now? Do I have to say so anymore? And then at first they said, oh, well, we'll pay you $1 an acre, a one-time payment, $1 an acre. What is that? And I have the paper at home, I forgot to bring it. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. And how many millions of dollars is this company gonna make? And now they say they're going to only have the wind power, not do the hydrogen. I don't know how many kilowatts or kilo whatever, everything that does. I think we have a power plant in Glen Rock that they could start up a unit, add on a little bit more to there. It's not going to increase the footprint of the power plant, and it would create so much more power than unreliable wind and solar power could possibly do. And then also on the state leases, we have a huge hunting population that comes in for all sorts of animals there. If you have hunting, or if they put wind towers on the state land, are hunters allowed to go there anymore? I have heard that, let's say my state lease, if they put wind towers there, I am responsible for those wind towers. If someone from another state, someone comes in hunting on state land, which they're allowed to do, I believe, comes in and hits one of their wind towers, I am liable for that. How is that fair? And I hate that word, fair. And then we also have huge transmission lines right through our property that probably in the 40s or 50s, whoever owned the property, I've owned it for 25 years, thought, oh, we're getting some money, we're going to get through this, it's not going to be a big deal. There have been, and we get zero money from the power company and these huge transmission lines. They come in all times of the year, during haying season, comes right through my hay meadow, and they wanna drive out there through the hay and the water to check their lines, to check their poles. I tell them they can't do it right then, because they're not gonna pay me damages. And I said, you have to wait until the hay is cut, you have to wait until a certain time of year. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But I have no repercussions for that either. I cannot go back, they go, well, we have an easement through here that is 70, 80 years old. And there's nothing I can do about it. And you just never know what is gonna happen 70 or 80 years from now. You're gonna have all of these wind towers, you're gonna have all of these transmission lines, all of these things that our children and grandchildren are gonna have to deal with. And as far as putting it, the money, less money for the schools for the state lease, I understand that. But I think that more importantly than some extra money going to the schools is the integrity of the state, of the government, watching out for our kids and standing up for what is right. And in closing, I do not think the state should prostitute its citizens for money.
Thank you. Are there questions? Madam Auditor.
Thank you so much for coming down. In particular, and we deal with the trash issue on a lot of sections of state land, and it's sad, frankly. In particular to the size of the substation, have you watched that particular complaint with the office?
No.
Okay, I just wonder if it's in violation of their agreement, that's a problem for this board.
And I don't know what the actual size was, but I figured they cleared it through you guys too.
Gotcha.
And I have zero control over that. I am just supposed to fence it, take care of it, you know, and have no control.
Madam Director, I think there were a number of questions that came up. Hunting access is one. I think the liability on, if the cow is somehow hit or shot or something like that, I think is what you were talking about. And then enforcement provisions. I think in the testimony that's been recorded and some others, I don't know if it's within your capacity to kind of not resolve, but answer some of those questions. Because I think they're probably legitimate questions for almost anybody.
Anybody, any leasing.
So just, it'd be nice to have that understanding, and probably that's a HE kind of question as well, so. Thank you very much, and I sympathize, because we've had many of those same sorts of issues on, with, gathering lines for oil and gas, and I also have PP&L running over my state.
Well, and when the person said, oh, well, it starts out big and ends up smaller,
Yeah.
that's never happened.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other? Come on up. Okay. Very good. Thanks.
Governor, Board.
Good to see you again.
Yep. You know how I feel. I'm not gonna go through it.
Just identify yourself.
Oh, Mike Stevens.
Thank
And
you.
you guys all know how I feel. This is pristine, it's got so much history, this Deer Creek Valley, it's unbelievable. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people travel through there. There's the Oregon Trail, there's the Bozeman Trail, there's the Mormon Trail, there's, it's part of the Deer Creek Graze, or the, Fort Edmund, Hay Reserve, it's part of the Fort Edmund Wood Reserve. I mean, the history is huge. So I'm not gonna get too off, but the siting council, has the siting council ever totally denied projects? So, Mr. Pope, if they deny you, are you gonna sue them too? It's a fair question. If they deny your permit,
Well,
Are you gonna-
I'm gonna ask that we keep it just to the.
okay, well, no,
I appreciate that. The back and forth.
I just wanna know. Okay, really, I guess, to close this, what carries greater weight in your decision making? The risk of litigation from foreign corporation or the responsibility to honor and protect our land? That's all I got to say.
Mr. Stevens, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Were there any questions for Mr. Stevens? We do have two people online. Coulson? Ms. Coulson?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh, yes, we can.
Hi, thank you, Chairman of the Board and board members. My name is Rachel Coulson, and I'm here to stand up with my fellow citizens that have spoken out against these two projects that are under question today, and as you've heard, as everyone knows, a plethora of other projects that are also having an impact. Among things, the wind wall, other projects that have come before. Both sides clearly identify this as a critical moment in time, but for different reasons. Out-of-state corporations, who may or may not know what it's like to live in Wyoming, are here for one reason. They're here for the interests of their stakeholders, for their contract, and for profit. The other side, like myself, and I hate to put this in sides, so we're being respectful here. We're here because this is our home. We're here because there is history. We're here because this is where we raise our families. And inasmuch so much that we want to bring children into the mix and say that we have a fiduciary responsibility to pay the public school system through our trust responsibility, don't we also have a responsibility to protect our lands, protect our homes, protect our future generations' viability in this wonderful state that people from across the world come to visit because we have the rarities, the beauties. Most all of you listening understand this. Mr. Pope understands this as well, even though he's not fighting for it. We have things that we're protecting because we live here. We are under attack in many different ways. And so I mirror many of the other comments. What's more important? The threat of litigation? Because Mr. Pope, that was a threat. And I want that on record. You can act like it wasn't, but it was a clear threat. As a citizen of Wyoming, with my family behind me and with the citizens that stand with me, I say go to court. Fine. Go to court and let's work this out. Because we as Wyoming citizens need to figure out what we're doing and what we want and how we're going to do this correctly before it's too late. Before we run out of time. Realign for a responsible approach to stewardship of this land. And let me put it on record now. Stop anything new. Please, stop. I know we're here talking about these two projects because this state land is involved. But you've heard so many other related areas and related issues. Please, my voice, add it to the pile. Slow down, stop. There's a bigger worldwide agenda here for green energy, for renewables, quote unquote, for data centers and AI. And Wyoming is about to be taken advantage of, and I want that to be seriously considered. I'm passionate, I'm scared, I'm emotional, but also practical. So if we have to go to court, we have to go to court. Let's pull out the contract and let's see what needs to be done. Outside corporations coming to our home don't care. And you'll hear that resounding across small towns across America. Well, they don't care because they're following the forms. They've filled out their applications. They've done everything from A to Z. So why are you denying us? We have greater reasons. We have the greater good as God is my witness. And to all of you, we have a greater mission to uphold. Educate the public, educate our citizenry, and steward this land. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Golson. Are there anyone else that has questions for Ms. Golson? If not, I'm not sure I can read this correctly, but Iona, is that how I pronounce your name?
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, Joanna.
Yep, okay, we can,
Can you hear? It's okay, everybody gets it wrong, no worries.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Joanna Iliesh, and I moved to Wyoming 5 years ago in 2021 from Colorado with my mother, hoping to just have peace of mind. Things were kind of hectic there in the Denver area and more expensive. And we were just shocked that we're in this position where we have to worry about a huge wind turbine farm close to Cheyenne. And I'm worried about vibrations. I want to thank Mr. Jacobson for mentioning those. I have attached some studies to my email in that respect. Not very many appears to have been made, but they have been noted. There's a Canadian study by a university that I attached to my email if you'd like to read that. I mean, there are definitely adverse effects with vibration. I didn't even know about the fiberglass particles that are coming off of blades that Mr. Jacobson noted. I want you to think that this is not just about me. I'm not the only one experiences vibrations or fiberglass. You are experiences this too. We're living in Cheyenne, living in South Wyoming. This is affecting all of us physically. And there's physical and mental, it's all related. I happen to have autoimmune issue that caused me to retire early, and I just moved to Wyoming to have peace of mind, to live in a healthy environment, because I felt that more conservative people are more responsible, taking care of the land and the environment. And like one of the board members, I believe, mentioned earlier, there are no borders for air and for water. We are all affected by this. You're landing land, the leases are on the land, but it's affecting the air that we're all breathing. Those vibrations are in the air. So maybe at the legal level, this kind of argument could be made that this leases for the land don't cover the fact that this air movements affect everyone around. It's not just about the lease, the land, what happens on that land. It's about everybody. So I just, like you can probably hear, I'm pretty nervous, and I'm terrified of these things, and I feel air movements and vibration that affect every cell in our body, and these particles, glass particles that most likely will breathe in if we have, and the size is huge for these projects too. It's like torture. It's like physical aggression. When you put something in the air that affects other people, it's like you hitting them with physically, and you know, we have the right to self-defense. I mean, this is affecting you too. It's affecting your children, your future generations, and I hope you take this into account, because we have no idea what the long-term effects are. And on the research that I did, a few years ago, I did a research. I heard about a place in Scotland where they put a lot of these wind farm turbines, and people were getting sick and their animals were getting sick. Also in Bulgaria, that's close to where I'm from. I'm from Romania originally, but I just saw a video recently and I didn't think to attach it, but I can send it to you. Problems they had over there with the property values go down, but people experience physically very unpleasant effects. Not everybody, obviously, because people are different in their health issues, but these things are real. I mean, people in Bulgaria fought and they were, you know, people who are outside of the country were trying to take over their land. So there are similar things in different parts of the world. This is a global agenda, and I will send you that video as well if you want to take a look at it. So thank you for your time, and I hope you take the right decision. It sounds like there are enough holes in the way these companies proceeded with their process that legally you can argue that maybe they didn't really follow all the procedures they were supposed to. So I hope you resend this list and you find it legally so we can save us from this horrible situation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yates. I appreciate that. Respectfully, if there are others that want to address the board, I'd really appreciate it if we can kind of keep it somewhat to the matters on the agenda. So please come on up. And again, that's just a respectful request. So I'm not trying to limit anybody's testimony.
My name is Kurt Hughes. live in Glen Rock, and I moved my family there in 1991. And I remember coming in from western Nebraska and getting on the interstate there at Guernsey and looking at Laramie Peak and, you know, just made the hair on the back of my neck just come alive. I thought, wow, what a grand view. And as we came up into Glen Rock, just marvelous. And I've watched since '91 the turbines and the garbage that now we look at. We talk about tourism, has a huge impact for this state. And I'm just afraid that what we're doing here is that I went through Iowa before, and it's disgusting. And it's disgusting when you go through Wyoming in sections of Medicine Bow. So I don't see the economic value. And I understand the whole deal with the fiduciary responsibilities in generating as much revenue as you can for the state. But you gotta ask yourself, at what cost? At what cost is that? And I want to do a shout out to the auditor. Your comments in Douglas, where you made that, you said, you know what, I made a mistake. It is so refreshing to hear from an elected official that I got it wrong. I just wanted to thank you for that. It gave me a little faith in my elected officials. Because as one of the speakers talked about here, feel like prostitutes. There's been no community involvement from Pronghorn. Not one meeting, and I only speak to Glen Rock. I don't know about Niobrara County. But if community involvement, as Mr. Martin talked, I think in April, in Niobrara County, is going to the county fair and buying a pig, that is not community involvement. And I'm not here to attack Mr. Martin. I'm sure his mother thinks he's a real fine individual. But my concern is fiduciary responsibility, but at what cost to the citizens of this state? The hydrogen has been pulled out of the Pronghorn. There's been a petition signed by over 2,500 people. It's not just hydrogen. And they're trying to sugarcoat, well, we're gonna pull away the hydrogen so it'll make it a more win-win. The people in western Converse County, they don't want the solar. We don't want the wind. And Governor, you spoke at the university, I think on Tuesday, and you made a comment that the university needs to listen to the citizens. And I'm asking you, as board members, to please listen to the citizens of Wyoming and what our concerns are. Because when elected officials, public servants, stop serving the public, they become a public liability. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Questions for Mr. Hughes? Okay, are there any other comments? Any other comments? Anyone online? I think we do have somebody coming up.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a super quick point?
Sure.
A couple folks have brought up the Laramie Range project, which was denied by the county commissioner. I just want to say this out loud and make sure I'm correct. That original project had no state lines involved, so we were not involved. However, it appears that they're putting forward a new project, and it has been published that there will be state lines involved. That application has not been received and not been before this board. Is that accurate?
No.
Mr. Chairman, I've seen the letter that they sent to all local governments, and it says that that project is going to involve state lands.
So Ms. Volk is approaching, and then we'll have Cody.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To address Ms. Racine's question, so we did receive the letter back in June from Connect Gen Rexall, and that was originally a 56,000 acre proposed project. 50,000 is private on 2 landowners' property, and 6,100 acres was approximately on state land trust. So what the county commissioners denied that permit. It was not ambiguous. It was due to what they stated was truck haul routes, safety, impact to the property owners. And so that was denied in September. The company then submitted to have a judicial review by district court. I believe it's in Nathaniel Hibbins' review for later this spring in May. And then just recently in May, we received a letter again, an adjacent property owner, along with the county was notified that they are now changing the footprint of the project to go from 56,000 acres, which was originally proposed with 170 turbines, to 42,000 acres, which would still encumber state land trust. So that would shrink also from the 56 to 42,000 acres and 170 turbines to 139. So yes, the state land office, I believe, had been in discussions to do a lease with the Connect Gen project, and that has been tabled until I think the decision gets weighed out by, and maybe I'm wrong, Ms. Berry, I apologize, but I think they wanted to see what was happening. But then the January letter we just received said that the company was going to proceed with the state land trust. Again, the company was not transparent in telling us as an adjacent landowner that the permit had been denied at a county level, and we were waiting for judicial decision on that. So I just wanted to give you that update, as both project letters did involve state land.
And Cody, we'll let you do that. Madam Auditor, I think great questions. I am just mentioning that we're sort of broadly talking an indictment of wind.
Yeah.
And that's fine, but I just want to know that we are wandering significantly.
And Mr. Chairman, my point was to make sure folks were aware that that was not and has not been before us.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Auditor, for the record, we do have an application. It is still in process. It has not been tabled, but still in process.
Okay. Please.
Oh,
I am sorry for the inconvenience.
Oh, that's okay. I knew you were saying for a while. I'm Billy Tillard. I'm from Niobrara County, and I work with a lot of people. I'm a massage therapist, and one thing that I noticed in our community is how stressful this is along in our community, how it's divided so many of our friends and families against each other. It's almost worse than politics, talking about Republican and Democrats. And I don't think that people realize the stress that it's putting on everyday life for everybody. The not knowing, not having the transparency to know where these things are even going to go. Yeah, we're supposed to try to fight for that and understand, what we're doing. Holly's hit home to me because I've been around communities and around very large ranches that have a lot of property. A lot of their property is not even close to where they live. So it's okay, and they're going to make a lot of money, and it's great, and I have family that is profiting, and I think that's fine. But it also is not benefiting the smaller people that are down the line that, you talked about, bringing in money and property rights and everything. Well, some of this opens the can of worms, like Holly was talking about, that comes down the line, and before you know it, we have these wires and transmission lines that have to hook up the grid, and then we have no property rights because they can reclaim the domain and different things and take away without us even participating in anything. And there's a lot of smaller ranches and a lot of stuff going on in business because they're having to deal with the effects of these other people that are trying to stay in business too. There's no balance. And like I said, my concern is how it's dividing families and friends and our community and the state. And I also heard on the way down how a lot of, actually heard on the news, President Trump talking about how foreign countries are suffering. They're ugly. They don't look good. People don't want to go there anymore, and they're not benefiting. I hate to see us being taken over by foreign companies that really don't understand the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tillard. Anyone else? We have somebody coming up, and I guess we have somebody online.
Massachusetts, 41 here in Cheyenne. I just wanted to come up and first of all, thank all the citizens that come here today. Very important for us to hear from them, and I really thank very much my constituent, Wendy Vogt, for the work that she's done. She's done a lot of work, and her research is vast. And in working with her, I've done a lot of research on my own as well. And the things that I've found is very disturbing. What I see with these turbines, we talk about them being green energy, about them being safer for our environment than what we've been doing. But I find just the opposite. What I found is the effects to our migratory birds and our raptors is vast. They kill hundreds of thousands of bats each year, which is part of our system for pollination. What they do to our insects, bees and other pollinators, is they drive them off or kill them. It's just the opposite of what we thought it was. And as we look at what's going on up in Canada, they have begun to remove a lot of their turbines because it's affecting their aquifers. And we depend a lot on our aquifers here in the state of Wyoming. Without them, it's devastating to our state. And we've got to take more of an in-depth look at this before we continue with what we're doing. We can totally destroy our state with these. And then we look at the residue that's coming off the blades, the fiberglass and the resins is getting into our pastures. And we're finding now that it's shortening the lifespan of our cattle. It's affecting their ability to reproduce, and the tonnage that we're finding in our cattle is dropping from 12 to 800 pounds. This is devastating to our state. We're an agricultural state. We have got to change what we're doing. I would even recommend, and I know we're not going to go there, but I would recommend shutting down the ones that exist now until we find out more about what's going on. This is devastating. This completely destroys the state of Wyoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, or Representative Brown. Any questions? Very good, sir. Thank you very much. I see Mr. Shell online. Mr. Shell, if you're talking to us, we can't hear you, but there you are.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. This is Jim Shell from Glen Rock, Wyoming. I am speaking in direct opposition to the Pronghorn Wind Project, and I feel so very comfortable to say that I'm speaking for the lion's share of the people of Wyoming with my opinion. But you know, the wind companies, these big companies coming from out of state, even foreign across around the globe, and they all promise prosperity and for the local communities and the people that are associated who have to put up with them. But like the gentleman that spoke earlier in the day, you can still see the infrastructure of little towns like Medicine Bow, Rock River have never changed, they've never improved. It's only a short shot in the arm for what little local businesses are there. And I would feel that this Pronghorn Wind project would leave Glen Rock in the very same shape. They bring nothing to the table for the locals in the way of long-term income from the project or the construction or the operation. The wind farm producers and companies bring in their own out-of-state workers and management, and you know, it never does result in anything but an eyesore for the locals and the people that have to live there for the rest of their lives and raise their children and their grandchildren there. And in this case, in the project, with Pronghorn project, the only landowner have any financial gain would be the true ranches and the out-of-state investors. The people of Glen Rock, Commerce County, and the state of Wyoming, and the people that come through here with tourists that put millions and millions and millions of dollars into our economy every year, we'll have to continue looking at more and more of those eyesores across the state. And I can just say that I don't believe that there's any Wyoming residents, even the people that actually put them on their property, there's not a one of them that can stand back and say, boy, that looks good. I sure do like that, and there's only one reason in the world that they would do it, and that's for financial gain. And I do understand that the private property rights is a very important thing, but when it affects everybody visually and what it does to this state's, just the over outlook of the state and the citizenry does not want it, I believe we need to really take a long look at it, and we need some real soul searching on here and how we move forward with energy related projects in the state. I just hate to see more of it, and certainly across the Front Range of the lower foothills mountains here in Glen Rock. It's just not something we want.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. Is there any question for Mr. Shell? All right. Anyone else? Anyone else? We do have somebody coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
There's a little guy that looks like he's sneezing.
Hey, Mr. Chairman and board, if you can hear me. I'm Jane Osborne, and would just like to represent some of our friends and family from Laramie County and even Platte County. And as far as the children of tomorrow, I just want to mirror some of the comments that what kind of legacy we're leaving for the children. And I understand that the state land assets and revenue from the state is important, but maybe they're better off getting a little deduction in their revenues than some of the downsides of the that we all know about, from fire mitigation and water and the eyesores and blinking lights, and we've all heard all of this ad infinitum. But as ranchers for 35 years in Wyoming, we understand the problems that ranch owners have with their infrastructure and their economy of scale. And we have actually contributed with running cattle and sheep on state lands, and understand tourism and how important that is to our state. And so I'd just like people to remember the legacy that we're leaving our people. We live right underneath where there's gonna be gigantic monstrosities right behind our house, of huge, we'll probably be displaced by windmills, so we're a little emotional about it ourselves. I've known, been personal friends with the B.B. Brooks Company and the Seckenhoffs, and I doubt they would really think too much of these huge wind farms going in on any state lands that they ran cattle on in the past. And I know it's under different ownership now, but just please do consider the voices of the people, and they are many, the people of Wyoming that would vote against this if we could have a vote today. Of the people, I don't think it would be a landslide in direction of the funds that these companies bring in, and it should be well considered before making ultimate choices. Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Osborne. Any questions for Ms. Osborne? Mr. Shell, it seems you still have your hand up. I didn't know if you had other things to add, or maybe not. Is there anyone here that, any additional people? Yeah, come on up, representative. Good afternoon. You see me go? Is that working? Thank you. I appreciate you guys' time very much, and I just wanted to call back on fiduciary responsibility and remind you that as far as fiduciary responsibility
know if they are or are not on those lands. But by committing to a 50-year commitment to these wind projects, we're isolating ourselves from those elements. And then I wanted to quickly reiterate what everybody has said in the fact, as in the form of fiduciary, that while we're looking at what these projects are gonna bring, I would really hope that we factor into what we're going up against. I keep hearing tourism, and that is our #2 revenue generator, and that is our #1 source of jobs. So when we're adding all this, we need to look into what we're hurting as a fiduciary consideration. Thank you guys very kindly for your time. That's the end of the question.
Thank you, Representative. Are there any questions for the Representative? Hearing none, thank you. Please come on up.
My name is Billy Johnson. I'm a third or fourth generation Commerce County. My grandpa was sheriff of Commerce County at one time. And I had a question for Pronghorn, I guess. I know they say they're bonded and stuff like that to tear them down, but where are we gonna put them? And are they taking everything, or is it just ground level? I heard that. Are they gonna dig down and take the whole bottom out, or is it gonna be this? And where's landfills? I mean, I think one of them would fill up a pretty good landfill. Does anybody know where they're gonna go with them?
And again, I'm trying to avoid getting a sort of back and forth kind of thing. I think it's a question that you have. It's a very good one, and it certainly deserves to be answered.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Anyone online? Madam Auditor, I see you have a light on.
Mr. Chairman, I just have an open question that I don't necessarily, in regards to public comment. I believe all 5 of us have received dozens of emails from an email address, ryocomments@gmail.com, and they appear to be in support of these projects, and I just am wondering if anyone is here who would claim those. Because I think everybody who's come today, and King and Douglas showed up and said their name, and I just was wondering that. And like I said, Mr. Chairman, I don't necessarily expect to get an answer, but I'd be real curious who that might be.
And we'll leave that question open. It would be nice if somebody claimed those. In this day and age, it's always fun to receive emails. Please, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative, good to have you here.
Thank you very much. I was listening to all this very, very valid.
And for the record, I'll note
Oh.
this is Representative Pepper. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate that. So I'm just here for a few comments. I've listened to all of the valid things, the fiduciary responsibilities, and then all of the fears and concerns. I'd just like to add to that while we're talking about the aesthetic and the operational, the nuisances, the shadows, the flickers, the potential interruption of radio and radar, so that would put, that could very well put our state at risk. Also, the during the operation of these, the interaction that they have with one another as far as things. The wildlife, we're all avid people about wildlife and how important that is to our state and to our economy. But I'd like to just add one more thing, and that it's the potential for some of the high-tech industries that we're soliciting to come into the state, that whether or not these types of activities will drive up the cost of energy, and that would not, it would almost be combative to what it is that we're trying to do, along with all of the other concerns that we have up and down our state amongst our citizens. So I'll stand for any questions. I just wanted to make a brief comment.
Yes, thank you, Representative. Are there any questions for the representative? Thank you very much, Representative Ottman. So I'm going to ask one more time here and online. Anyone? All right. Members of the board. Do I hear you?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. I have a motion here. Based on Wyoming 8th Judicial District Court Judge F. Scott Peasley's decision that wind lease number WL-1620, which was approved by the board on April 3rd, 2025, be reversed and resolution be vacated for the reasons set forth in Judge Peasley's decision and order dated December 5th, 2025, specifically finding that the board's approval failed to follow the board's own rules on wind energy leasing and was therefore unlawful. And this decision declaring that the board's decision was unlawful, having the full force and effect of law, I move that the board direct the director to initiate the process to cancel and rescind wind lease number WL-1620 issued to Pronghorn H2 LLC due to Judge Peasley's decision, which would include the director carrying out the process to issue the required request for cancellation.
Thank you. You've heard the motion. Is there support for the motion?
Second.
It's been seconded by the auditor. Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank everyone for coming out today and in many of our meetings to express public comment. I do think that we got the decision in April wrong. I should speak for myself. I know that I did. I've long been opposed to wind industry and development, being that my career was spent in the coal industry and oil and gas, and seeing the unfair advantage that's received there. I've tried to balance that with my fiduciary duty and with private property rights. But at the end of the day, as we've discussed today, that fiduciary responsibility is in perpetuity. It's a long-term fiduciary. It's not just today, what we receive today, but over a long period of time. And at the end of the day, this board is made up of elected officials that are beholden to the voters. And that's important because that makes sure that we hear the voices of the public, which are critically important. And so, based on what I know now and the subsequent wind leases that have come before this board, I've been a no. And so that makes a big difference. And I think we've heard a lot from folks that this is a loud minority, and I don't believe that it is. I think this is the majority of people in Wyoming. I think that this motion is distinct in a lot of ways because we've heard too that this is just pandering to the public. This is a breach of contract, or this sets terrible precedent. But there's a really important distinction here, and it's that there's a judge's ruling that has taken place that has identified that we are in conflict with the law. And so that's a really important thing because I do not want this board to be characterized as setting bad precedent, that we're not open for business, that our word is not worth anything, because that's not what we're talking about here. There's a really fine line, and that's important that we have this judge's decision. And so it's not just based on an opposition that comes to this board that we go with the wind, no pun intended, but it's really off of a decision that's been made, and that's really important. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Further discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Treasurer.
I do believe it's a breach of my fiduciary duty because it's a constitutional duty. If you want to change the law, these things are legal. And the place to do that is in the legislative process. And that's the place for it. There are already, appeals to the Supreme Court. And I do agree with the young lady earlier that said, let's get this to court, let's move through the process. Because we are a nation of laws. Now, we forgot about those laws during the Biden administration. We had something called ESG, Environmental, Social, and Governance, in which that we basically turned over our rights as citizens to the United Nations and the Paris Climate Accord. And that ladies and gentlemen, you know that costs this state $500-600 million a year. And to let you know that I'm not against energy, and I'm actually not for wind energy. I want to say the governor put on just a very, very excellent program up at the Rochelle Center the other day, and where I got to speak with one of the head folks from J.P. Morgan. And you probably know this because you've been following wind energy, is that President Trump has vacated like $30 billion worth of wind energy. And the discussion I had with the gentleman from J.P. Morgan is that, let's take that $30 billion and let's build mouth-to-the-mine coal-fired plants in Wyoming and in the West. And so I think that we have an energy policy at this point in time, is that we put all of our energy ideas in center, we circle around it, and then we say fire. And we're going to have to figure out how to do this. Because, folks, Japan has 2.5 times the nameplate generating capacity as we do, and we are basically ahead of Japan at the beginning of the Paris Climate Accords. We gave away 400 gigawatts of dispatchable coal energy and put on these renewable things. And so we haven't gained an inch, and they have surpassed us. So this is a national security issue that we have to get our energy structure in order. And I understand the concerns that you have, and I think that a lot of them are valid. We have to address those. Those has to be really have to be addressed, through the legislative process. They got to be addressed and looked at from the standpoint of what we do know, what we think we know, and what we would like to know. I believe that we are going to have a problem with this in the courts. I think we're not gaining any ground whatsoever with voting this thing and trying to move the process along to cancel these things. That essentially it's going to end up in a situation where we are going to have some blowback on this. And it's not only on this; it's on every lease that the state has. This crosses every lease. So I hope that you would go to Article 18. There's 6 sections in there, and that tells you exactly what our fiduciary duties are, and how we are limited, and how the legislature is limited as to what we can and can't do. And then when you think about that, and you think about how we're paying for education, and you're thinking about all the property tax relief that we're going to get that goes to education, I can tell you that the Treasurer's Office, we are doing all we can to make sure that education is paid for and your taxes are low, and we've done a darn good job on that. But in these situations here where I think the Constitution is pretty clear, I feel I don't have any choice because of the problems that we're going to have that can participate in this situation are as severe as the ones that I think that you face out there. And you know that I've looked at some different things to mitigate some of the effects that happen in these areas here, because I think you do have real problems. And I'm going to continue to do that, because everything is just plus and minus, ones and O's. It's a binary basis. You're either right or you're wrong. And we don't have the opportunity, I think, to get in there and actually sit down and talk about things that can happen. A lot of these things here, yeah, we might get rid of state leases, but you're going to see the windmills out there anyway. And tell me, why should you take money out of the children's pockets if you're going to have the windmills in your backyard anyway? So you got a bigger problem with that, and that really you have to look at is what as you say, what do we want to have? What do we want to live in? But you got to start really with the legislative process, And then you gotta say to yourself, well, if I don't like windmills, am I gonna stop, you know, a gas fire plant or a coal fire plant up in Gillette? You know, those are things that you guys ought to go to bed tonight and think about how we can work together instead of how we can basically try to tear it all apart. Because we're not in this world alone, and we're way behind China. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And Mr. Treasurer, further discussion. Further discussion, Madam Auditor.
Mr. Chairman, the quote that I know we all love is the best time to plant a tree was 50 years ago, and the next best time to do it is today. I see this a little bit similarly. I, again, for one, can say I wish I knew everything 6 months ago, or a year ago, or 7 years ago that I know today that I didn't. I will say out loud that I have the utmost respect for the Attorney General, and I don't denigrate his decision at all. What I did learn in this process, and this is none of your all's problem, but it is something for this board that I think I have learned that he doesn't work for me. That's not his job. However, that's something that this board has had to grapple with, because I think there's not been this disagreement on an appeal, at least not in my term on the board, and that's something I've learned and will figure out how to deal with moving forward. So anyway, I just wanted to say that out loud.
Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to vote aye on this motion to begin the process of rescinding these leases pursuant to rules in the contract. I've said it a lot, but these wind leases are inconsistent with our values. They're inconsistent with our fiduciary duty. And they're wrong. And that's why I voted against this back in April of last year. I want to cite here for a second Title 36, which Mr. Pope actually cited, and I find this statute fascinating. 36-5-113, cancellation of leases. The board shall have the power and authority to cancel leases procured by fraud, deceit, or misrepresentation, or for use of the lands for unlawful or illegal purposes, or for the violation of the covenants of the lease upon proper proof thereof. And we have a decision saying that this is an illegal purpose. The Pronghorn lease violates the rules of the board and is unlawful, and that's what Judge Peasley has ruled. So you look at Title 36, it's very clear that we shall have the power to cancel these leases. Thank you.
Thanks. Further discussion? Mr. Treasurer, I wanted to thank you for bringing up the legislature. I remember back when Governor Dave Friedenthal was in office, Cale Case started talking about the fact that we would perhaps lose our vistas, we lose that wonderful landscape that we saw. He recommended creating a tax, which of course the legislature did not like, because we never like to raise taxes. But his point was, we're going to lose one of those assets that's just as valuable as our coal or our oil or our gas. And he thought there should be a severance, because in fact we do sever the view. I just note that has been in front of the legislature for now, probably 20 years. And so I think it is maybe a time that the legislature can consider that. With that, if there is no further discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Nays?
No.
I'm a no. That motion carries.
Mr. Chairman. Just to clarify for the record, that's just for lease 1620, not for.
That was the matter we were discussing. We kind of roamed broadly. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I have another motion with regard to the appeal.
Okay.
I move that the board direct the Wyoming Attorney General's office to withdraw the appeal currently pending before the Wyoming Supreme Court because the board did not consent to the appeal.
Is there support for the secretary's motion?
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Nays?
No.
I am a no. That motion carries as well. I will convey that to the Attorney General. On to matter.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, I feel it's problematic when a state board takes it into their hands to be the legislature, the court, and the executive branch all at one time. And I feel that's, more or less what we got done on this last motion. We totally bypassed any type of due process. I'm not sure whether or not we even had the authority to tell the Attorney General to tie his shoelaces, let alone stop an appeal. This man is one of the most, I think, talented, respected jurists in the history of this state, and I have every, unqualified respect for the man to do his job and to do it the way he should.
Mr. Chairman.
Madam Superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to point out, I don't think this has anything to do with the utmost level of respect I have for the Attorney General. I think this brings to light a significant issue that we faced, is that we do not have counsel for this board that's not conflicted in this situation. And even earlier this morning, we had conflict counsel for a contested lease, but we haven't in this circumstance. And so with failure of our own independent counsel, I just think that has to be recognized in this situation.
Well, Mr. Chairman, there goes my point. We have became our own counsel, and as everybody knows, that a doctor and a lawyer, if you're your own doctor or your own lawyer, you have a fool for counsel or a fool for a lawyer.
Yeah, well, we could go on with this for a while.
Let's move on.
The matter's been settled. I think we can move on, please.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do think that brings up a good point, which is that I think we should request conflict counsel as this proceeds. I mean, we do need to carry out the process pursuant to the contract and the rules of the board. So I think as this proceeds, I guess there's sort of this assumption that we're going to get it here. I'm willing to have a conversation before there's a motion, but I think we got to get it. And I think we're very clear we're at the crossroads. And so, do the other members of the board think that we're okay without a motion and we'll get it? Or do we need to request conflict counsel and proceed in that way today?
Mr. Chairman, I think, Secretary, at this point in time, it's one thing I agree with him is that we probably should flesh that out a little bit.
All right, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, on that note, I think based on what I know, it's required that we would have conflict counsel. I'm not even sure who. So I guess, to my point to the Secretary's question, I don't think we need a motion specifically regarding conflict counsel.
It's up to the board.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, I respect that. I think we can let it proceed, and I will say I think we probably should have had it preceding this meeting, but I appreciate the auditor's comments, and we can allow this. I think we'll get it here, hopefully tomorrow.
Yeah, I think the Secretary in that case, I think we should have had it before we made a vote on something that can affect practically every lease in the state of Wyoming, it would have been good to have conflict counsel.
Yeah, well, I appreciate the matter's been settled, we've talked about it, unless there's a motion to that effect, I'm gonna recommend that we move on. I don't hear a motion.
Mr. Chairman?
Madam Auditor.
Sorry, this is a motion on a separate.
Okay.
Okay. Based on Wyoming 8th Judicial District Court Judge F. Scott Peasley's decision that when lease number letters and numbers WL 1620, which was approved by the board on April 3rd, 2025, be reversed and resolution be vacated for the reasons set forth in Judge Peasley's decision and order dated December 5th, 2025, specifically finding that the board's approval failed to follow the board's own rules on wind energy leasing and was therefore unlawful, and this decision declaring that the board's decision was unlawful, having the full force and effect of law, I move that the board direct the director to initiate the process to cancel and rescind wind lease WL 1620 issued to Sidewinder. And do I have that number? 25, sorry, 1625, issued to Sidewinder due to Judge Peasley's decision, which would include the director carrying out the process to issue the required request for cancellation. Essentially, those leases are the same. If lease A is in violation of the law, I'm saying lease B also is in violation of the law, so that would be my motion.
Motion's been made, is there a second? Let me ask if there's a second.
Yeah.
Did I hear you second it, Mr. Secretary?
I'm happy to second it. I think the superintendent did as well, but second, yeah, I think she did as well.
The superintendent did? Okay, thank you, I missed that. Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, let's walk this through. Let's say, that this thing is appealed, it's reversed, Peasley's is reversed at the Supreme Court. I guess it would be up to the Supreme Court to stay Peasley's and vacate or can the Supreme Court vacate our motion here to reverse the lease? Is that how that works? I guess I need counsel, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peters or Ms. Gamble?
Mr. Chairman, Jim Peters at the Attorney General's office. Given sort of the posture that we're at here procedurally, I'm not sure that it would be appropriate to provide advice in this public forum. I'm happy to do so in an executive session if the board desires, but I don't believe that'd be appropriate at this time.
It's not necessary, Mr. Chairman. I'll take that
All right.
counsel.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion before us. It's been moved, it's been seconded. Is there any further discussion? If there is none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's an aye from the secretary. Is that correct, Mr. Secretary?
I thought, were we on auditor's motion?
Yes, we are. Did you vote aye on it?
Yeah, I didn't hear anything else, but yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the Sidewinder one, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, then ayes, there are 3. Nays?
No.
And I'm a no. Madam Director.
Mr. Chairman, if there are no further motions, you have exhausted your agenda for your board of planning commissioners.
Okay. Thank you. Let's take